Before we dive into this story, leave a comment and let us know what city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy the story. The late afternoon sun streamed through the stained glass windows of St. Catherine's Cathedral, casting kaleidoscope patterns across the polished marble floors. Outside, the Manhattan streets hummed with their usual chaos of taxis and tourists, but inside the cathedral, everything was orchestrated perfection. White roses climbed every column, their petals so flawless they looked artificial. Satin ribbons in shades of cream and gold draped across every pew. A string quartet played something classical and expensive sounding in the corner, the kind of music that whispered old money and social registers. Sophia Bennett stood in the cathedral's side entrance, gripping her phone like it was the only solid thing in a tilting world. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she stared at the text message from her best friend Riley. The wedding starts in 20 minutes. Where are you? The Harper wedding. St. Catherine's Cathedral. Main entrance. Don't be late. Sophia glanced down at her dress, a soft lavender bridesmaid gown that Riley had insisted she wear. The fabric felt expensive against her skin. Probably cost more than Sophia's monthly rent in her shoebox apartment in Queens. Riley Harper, her college roommate and the closest thing to a sister she'd ever had, was getting married today to some investment banker named Marcus. Sophia had been running late all morning, thanks to a subway delay that had turned her carefully planned schedule into absolute chaos. She hurried through the side entrance, her heels clicking urgently against the stone floor. The cathedral was massive, with multiple chapels and hallways branching off in different directions, like a maze designed to confuse late wedding guests. Sophia followed the sound of organ music, assuming it would lead her to Riley's ceremony. She could already imagine Riley's face, that mix of relief and exasperation that she'd perfected over their 10-year friendship. "You're late," Riley would say, "but I knew you'd make it. You always do." Sophia rounded a corner and pushed through an ornate wooden door, stepping into what she assumed was the main chapel. The organ music swelled, dramatic and commanding. Rows of guests filled every pew, all turned expectantly toward the back of the church. Sophia's breath caught. She was later than she thought. The processional was starting. She slipped into the nearest empty spot at the back, smoothing her lavender dress and trying to look like she'd been there all along. The woman next to her, dripping in diamonds and disapproval, gave her a withering look, but said nothing. Sophia focused on the altar, trying to spot Riley among the bridesmaids lined up near the front. But something felt off. The bridesmaids weren't wearing lavender. They were wearing champagne-colored gowns with intricate beading that caught the light like captured stars. Sophia's stomach dropped. Wrong wedding. She'd walked into the wrong wedding. This wasn't Riley's ceremony. These weren't Riley's guests. That wasn't Riley's string quartet playing Pachelbel's canon with mechanical precision. Sophia looked around frantically, trying to figure out how to extract herself without causing a scene. But the organ music was building to its crescendo, and everyone was standing, turning toward the back of the cathedral where the bride would make her entrance. Except the bride wasn't entering from the back. She was already halfway down the aisle, and she was walking directly toward Sophia. No, not toward Sophia. Toward the spot where Sophia was standing. The bride was tall and elegant, her dress a masterpiece of silk and lace that probably cost more than Sophia's college education. Her veil obscured her face, but her body language radiated fury. She moved with sharp, angry steps that made her train snap behind her like a whip, and she was headed straight for the doors near where Sophia stood. "Excuse me," Sophia whispered to the diamond-dripping woman next to her. "I think I'm in the wrong chapel. Is there another wedding happening here today?" The woman looked at her like she'd just asked if the Pope was Catholic. The Blackwood Montgomery wedding is the only event at St. Catherine's today. "Now please be quiet. The bride is coming." Blackwood, Montgomery. Sophia's mind raced. She didn't know any Blackwoods or Montgomerys. She was definitely in the wrong place. She needed to leave, immediately, before anyone noticed she was crashing a stranger's wedding in a lavender dress that marked her as clearly not part of this champagne and diamonds aesthetic. But before Sophia could move, the bride swept past her row and stopped, just stopped, right there in the middle of the aisle, with hundreds of guests watching, and the organ playing, and the groom waiting at the altar with an expression of growing confusion. "I can't do this," the bride announced, her voice carrying across the cathedral with crystal clarity. "I won't do this." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Sophia froze, torn between fascination and the desperate urge to disappear into the marble floor. She tried to edge toward the exit, but the pews were packed tight, and there was nowhere to go without climbing over Diamond Woman and causing even more of a scene. The groom at the altar, a man in his early 30s with the kind of weak chin that expensive tailoring couldn't quite fix, stepped forward. "Victoria, darling, please," he said, his voice strained. "Not here. Not now. Especially here. Especially now." The bride, Victoria apparently, shot back. She reached up and tore off her veil, revealing a face that belonged on magazine covers, all sharp cheekbones and fierce green eyes. "I'm not marrying you, Charles. I'm not marrying someone who's been sleeping with my cousin for the past 6 months." Another gasp. Louder this time, somewhere in the front rows, a woman who might have been the betrayed cousin let out a strangled sound. Charles's face went from pink to white to an unfortunate shade of crimson. "Victoria, you're being hysterical," he managed. "I'm being honest," Victoria corrected. "Something you've apparently forgotten how to do." The cathedral descended into chaos. Guests started whispering, then talking, then practically shouting to be heard over each other. Charles tried to approach Victoria, but she held up a hand that stopped him cold. A woman in the front row who had to be Victoria's mother stood up, looking like she might faint or start throwing things. It was hard to tell which. And Sophia, trapped in her pew like a prisoner in lavender, could only watch as the most expensive wedding disaster in Manhattan history unfolded before her eyes. Victoria turned on her heel, her train swirling dramatically, and started walking back down the aisle. She was heading for the exit. She was heading directly past Sophia's pew. And as she approached, her fierce green eyes locked onto Sophia's face with an intensity that made Sophia's breath catch. "You," Victoria said, stopping directly in front of her. "You're coming with me." Sophia blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "I said you're coming with me," Victoria repeated, reaching out and grabbing Sophia's hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong for someone wearing white silk gloves. "I need a bridesmaid, and you're already dressed for the part." "But I'm not," Sophia started to say, except Victoria was already pulling her out of the pew, past the scandalized Diamond Woman, into the aisle. "I'm at the wrong wedding. I don't even know you. My friend Riley is getting married in a different chapel, and I'm supposed to be there, not here. Definitely not here." "Perfect," Victoria said, still pulling her toward the exit. "That means you don't have any stake in this disaster. You can be my witness that I actually left instead of letting my mother convince me this was all a momentary bout of cold feet." They were almost to the doors when a voice cut through the chaos like a knife through wedding cake. "Stop." Everyone stopped. The guests, the musicians, even Victoria's furious momentum halted. Sophia turned, along with everyone else, to see who had spoken with such absolute authority. A man stood near the altar, partially hidden in the shadows of one of the cathedral's massive stone columns. Sophia hadn't noticed him before, but now that he'd moved into the light, she understood why everyone had gone silent. He was the kind of man who commanded attention without asking for it, the kind whose presence made you forget there were other people in the room. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black suit that fit him like it had been designed by someone who understood exactly how fabric should worship the male form. His hair was dark, almost black, styled with casual precision. His face was all strong lines and sharp angles, saved from being too harsh by a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. But it was his eyes that made Sophia forget to breathe. Even from across the cathedral, even through the stained glass light and the chaos, she could see them. Dark, intense, calculating. The eyes of someone who saw everything and missed nothing. "Damien," Victoria said, and something in her voice shifted. The fury was still there, but underneath it was something else. Relief, maybe, or hope. "Stay out of this." "I would," the man, Damien, said as he walked down the aisle toward them. His voice was deep, controlled, the kind of voice that made you want to listen. "But you're about to make a mistake." "The only mistake," Victoria said sharply, "was agreeing to marry Charles in the first place." Damien stopped a few feet from Victoria and Sophia. Up close, he was even more devastating. Sophia found herself staring at the line of his jaw, the way his dark eyes swept over the scene with cool assessment. He looked at Victoria with something that might have been concern. Then his gaze shifted to Sophia. For one moment, one breathless, impossible moment, Damien Blackwood looked directly at Sophia Bennett. His eyes met hers, and the world seemed to narrow down to just that connection, that instant of recognition that made no sense because they'd never met, never spoken, never existed in the same universe until 30 seconds ago. "Who are you?" Damien asked, his voice softer now but no less commanding. "Nobody," Sophia managed. "I'm nobody. I'm at the wrong wedding. I was supposed to be at the Harper wedding, and I took a wrong turn and ended up here, and I'm very sorry for the confusion, but I really should go now." She tried to pull her hand free from Victoria's grip, but Victoria held on tighter. "She's my new bridesmaid," Victoria announced, since apparently my actual bridesmaids knew about Charles and my cousin and didn't bother to tell me. Dramatic gasps, shocked whispers. Somewhere in the champagne-colored bridesmaid lineup, someone started crying. Charles looked like he wanted the marble floor to open up and swallow him whole. Damien's expression didn't change. He looked at Victoria, then at Sophia, then back at Victoria. "You can't leave," he said simply. "Watch me," Victoria shot back. "There are 400 guests here," Damien continued in that same calm, rational tone, "including the mayor, 3 senators, and the CEO of every major company in Manhattan. Your parents have spent a year planning this wedding. If you walk out now, the scandal will follow you for the rest of your life." "I don't care," Victoria said, but Sophia could hear the waver in her voice. She did care. Of course she cared. Damien must have heard it too, because his expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Yes, you do. You care about your reputation, your family's business, your future. Charles isn't worth throwing all of that away." "Then what do you suggest?" Victoria demanded. "I can't marry him." "I won't." Damien was quiet for a long moment. Sophia could practically see him thinking, calculating, running through options with that sharp, strategic mind. Then he looked at Sophia again, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. "Marry me instead," Damien said. The cathedral went completely, utterly silent. Even the traffic noise from outside seemed to hush. Sophia's brain tried to process what she'd just heard and failed completely. "What?" Victoria said, echoing Sophia's thoughts. "Marry me," Damien repeated, his eyes never leaving Sophia's face. "Not you, Victoria. Her." And then he pointed directly at Sophia. Sophia's world tilted sideways. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. No thoughts formed. She was pretty sure her brain had simply stopped functioning, overloaded by the sheer impossibility of what was happening. Are you insane? Victoria finally managed. Damien, you can't just marry a random stranger. Why not? Damien said, still looking at Sophia with those dark, unreadable eyes. You were about to drag her out of here as your witness. I'm offering a better solution. Better how? Sophia squeaked, finding her voice at last. It came out several octaves higher than normal. How is marrying a complete stranger better than literally anything else? Damien finally broke eye contact, turning to address the sea of shocked guests. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the cathedral. There's been a change in today's proceedings. My cousin Charles has been exposed as unfaithful, and his engagement to Victoria Montgomery is hereby terminated. Charles opened his mouth to protest, but one look from Damien silenced him. Sophia was starting to understand that Damien Blackwood was the kind of man who silenced people with looks. However, Damien continued, the Blackwood family has no intention of wasting this beautiful ceremony or disappointing our distinguished guests. Therefore, I'll be taking Charles's place at the altar. He turned back to Sophia, extending his hand. With this young woman as my bride. No, Sophia said firmly. Absolutely not. This is crazy. You're crazy. Everyone here is crazy, and I'm leaving right now before I get infected with whatever collective insanity is happening. She tried to move toward the exit, but Damien stepped smoothly into her path. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. He smelled like expensive cologne and confidence, and Sophia had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. What's your name? He asked quietly, so only she could hear. That's not relevant to me not marrying you, Sophia shot back. It's relevant to the marriage license, Damien countered. Though we can work around that if necessary. Sophia stared at him. Are you actually serious right now? Do you genuinely think I'm going to marry you, a complete stranger, at someone else's wedding? Yes, Damien said simply. Why would I possibly agree to that? Because you're clearly not wealthy, Damien said, and before Sophia could be offended, he continued. Your dress is borrowed, probably from the friend whose wedding you were supposed to attend. Your shoes are scuffed. Your purse is from Target. You're working class, maybe lower middle class, struggling to make ends meet in one of the most expensive cities in the world. Am I wrong? Sophia felt heat creep up her neck. That's incredibly rude. It's observant, Damien corrected. And it's relevant, because I'm offering you a way out of whatever financial stress you're experiencing. Marry me, stay married for 1 year, and I'll pay you $5 million. The world stopped spinning. Sophia forgot how to breathe. $5 million. He'd just offered her $5 million to marry him for a year. That was more money than she'd see in 10 lifetimes of working at the advertising agency, where she currently spent 60 hours a week designing logos for clients who always wanted everything changed at the last minute. $5 million, she repeated faintly. That's my opening offer, Damien said. I'm willing to negotiate up to $7 million if you agree immediately. Why? Sophia demanded. Why would you pay a stranger $7 million to marry you? What's wrong with you? Do you have a weird collection of human toenails in your basement? Are you secretly wanted by the FBI? Is this an elaborate way to harvest my organs? Damien's mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. No to all of those. The answer is simple. I need a wife. There are dating apps for that, Sophia said. Have you heard of Tinder? Hinge? RichPeopleLookingForSpouses.com? I don't have time for dating apps, Damien said patiently. My grandmother's will stipulates that I must be married by my 35th birthday to inherit control of Blackwood Industries. That birthday is in 2 weeks. Sophia blinked. So this is about money for you too. It's about control. Damien corrected. Blackwood Industries is a $10 billion technology conglomerate. If I don't marry by the deadline, control passes to my Uncle Richard, who will run the company into the ground within a year. Thousands of employees will lose their jobs. Decades of innovation will be destroyed. All because my grandmother believed marriage made people responsible. He said it matter-of-factly, without emotion, like he was describing a business transaction, which, Sophia realized, was exactly what this was to him. A business transaction that happened to involve a wedding dress and a cathedral full of witnesses. So, you need a wife, Sophia said slowly, trying to wrap her mind around the situation. And I just happened to wander into your chapel at exactly the right moment. Or exactly the wrong moment, depending on your perspective, Damien said. But yes, call it fate, coincidence, or spectacularly bad timing. You're here, you're clearly not connected to my social circle, and you need money. I need a wife. We can help each other. Victoria, who had been watching this exchange with growing astonishment, finally found her voice. Damien, this is insane even for you. You can't marry a random wedding crasher. I can and I will, Damien said calmly. Unless you'd like to volunteer for the position? I know you just escaped one unwanted marriage, but the offer stands. Hard pass, Victoria said immediately. But Damien, seriously, think about this. You don't know anything about this woman. She could be anyone. She could be anyone, Damien agreed, which is exactly why she's perfect. No ulterior motives beyond the money. No social climbing ambitions. No complicated family connections to navigate. Just a simple business arrangement with clear terms and expectations. He looked back at Sophia, and she felt the full force of his attention like a physical thing. Sophia, he said, and she realized she must have told him her name at some point, though she couldn't remember doing so. I understand this is sudden. I understand it's unconventional, but think about what $7 million could do for your life. No more money stress. No more struggling to pay rent. Freedom to pursue whatever dreams you've been putting on hold because you couldn't afford them. Sophia's mind raced. $7 million. She could pay off her student loans. She could help her mom, who worked 2 jobs just to keep her tiny house in Pennsylvania. She could finally take the graphic design courses she'd been wanting to do for years. She could breathe. Really breathe, for the first time since graduating college, into an economy that seemed designed to crush anyone who wasn't born wealthy. But marriage. Marriage to a complete stranger. A devastatingly handsome, slightly terrifying billionaire stranger who apparently thought proposing to random women at crashed weddings was a reasonable solution to inheritance problems. This is crazy, Sophia said. But even she could hear that her voice had lost some of its conviction. It's practical, Damien countered. Crazy would be marrying someone you actually love and risking your heart. This is just business. Clean, simple, temporary. 1 year of your life for complete financial security. That's the offer. Sophia looked at Victoria, who shrugged helplessly. She looked at the crowd of guests, who were watching this drama unfold with expressions ranging from shock to fascination to scandalized delight. She looked at Charles, still standing at the altar, who had somehow managed to become irrelevant to his own wedding disaster. And then she looked back at Damien Blackwood, at his steady gaze and his calm expression, and his complete certainty that this insane plan would work. If I say yes, Sophia said slowly, and that's a huge if, I have conditions. Name them, Damien said immediately. Separate bedrooms. No expectations of actual intimacy. This is a business arrangement, and it stays professional. Agreed. I continue my job and my life as normally as possible. I'm not becoming some trophy wife who gets paraded around at charity events. I'll need you at some events, Damien said, for appearance's sake. But I'll give you advance notice, and you can refuse anything that makes you genuinely uncomfortable. And when the year is over, we divorce cleanly. No drama, no tabloid scandals, no trying to keep me locked in some billionaire marriage prison. Damien's mouth definitely twitched that time. No billionaire marriage prisons. You have my word. Sophia took a deep breath. This was insane. This was the most insane thing she'd ever considered, and that included the time in college when Riley had convinced her to go bungee jumping at 3 a.m. But $7 million. Financial freedom. A chance to actually live instead of just survive. Fine, Sophia heard herself say. Yes, I'll marry you. The cathedral erupted in whispers and gasps. Victoria looked at Sophia like she'd just announced she was joining a cult. Charles made a strangled noise that might have been a protest, or might have been relief that the spotlight was finally off him. And Damien Blackwood, billionaire CEO, and apparently the world's most efficient proposer, simply nodded. Excellent, he said. Father Morrison, if you could prepare to begin the ceremony, I'll need 10 minutes to brief my bride on the expectations. He took Sophia's hand, the same way Victoria had grabbed it earlier, but Damien's grip was different. Gentler. Warmer. His fingers intertwined with hers in a way that felt shockingly intimate for someone she'd met 5 minutes ago. He led her toward a small side chapel off the main cathedral, Victoria trailing behind them like a bewildered shadow. This is absolutely insane, Victoria muttered as they walked. I can't believe I'm watching this happen. I can't believe I inadvertently caused this. My mother is going to kill both of us. Your mother will be relieved she doesn't have to return the wedding gifts, Damien said practically. Sophia, we need to cover some basic information before the ceremony. They entered the side chapel, a smaller, more intimate space, with wooden pews and soft candlelight. Damien finally released Sophia's hand, and she immediately felt the loss of that warmth. She rubbed her palms together, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 10 minutes. First, Damien said, pulling out his phone and typing rapidly. I'm sending you a contract that outlines all terms of our arrangement. You'll want to have a lawyer review it, but the basic points are these. We stay married for 1 year. You attend necessary public events as my wife. You maintain complete discretion about the business nature of our arrangement. In exchange, you receive $7 million, paid in full the day our divorce is finalized. Sophia's phone buzzed. She pulled it out with shaking hands and stared at the document he'd just sent. It was frighteningly official looking, dense with legal language and numbered clauses. You just happen to have a marriage contract ready to go? I had my lawyer draft several versions last week, Damien admitted. I was running out of time and needed contingency plans. Version A was for a traditional arranged marriage with someone from my social circle. Version B was for a marriage agency scenario. Version C was for exactly this situation, actually. You planned for marrying a random wedding crasher? Sophia asked incredulously. I planned for every contingency, Damien said. That's how you succeed in business and in life. Victoria, who had been examining the contract over Sophia's shoulder, let out a low whistle. Damien, these terms are actually incredibly fair. Generous, even. Are you feeling okay? Did you hit your head? I'm feeling pragmatic, Damien said. This arrangement only works if Sophia feels fairly compensated for her time and effort. Speaking of which, we need to discuss living arrangements. You'll move into my penthouse immediately after the ceremony. I know you said separate bedrooms, and we'll have those, but you'll need to maintain residence at my place for the marriage to appear legitimate. Sophia's head was spinning. I have an apartment, a lease, a roommate named Carla who's going to wonder why I didn't come home. You can maintain your apartment if you'd like, Damien said. I'll cover the rent, but you need to primarily live with me. Appearance matters in my world. People will be watching, judging, looking for any sign that this marriage isn't real. Because it's not real, Sophia pointed out. Because it's not traditional, Damien corrected. But for the next year, we'll need to make it appear as real as any other marriage, which means public affection, consistent stories about how we met, and believable body language when we're together. He stepped closer to her, and Sophia's breath hitched. Damien reached out and gently tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear, his fingers brushing against her cheek. The touch was soft, almost tender, completely at odds with the clinical way he'd been describing their business arrangement. Like this, Damien said quietly, small gestures that suggest intimacy and affection. Can you do that? Sophia couldn't speak. His touch had short-circuited her brain. She managed a nod. Good, Damien said, stepping back. We'll practice more later. For now, you need to know the basics about me. I'm 34 years old, CEO of Blackwood Industries, which specializes in AI and machine learning technology. I graduated from MIT at 20, Harvard Business School at 22. I don't have any siblings. My parents died in a car accident when I was 15, and my grandmother raised me. She passed away 6 months ago, which is what triggered the will situation. His voice remained steady, but Sophia caught something in his eyes when he mentioned his grandmother. Pain, quickly hidden but there all the same. I'm sorry, Sophia said softly, about your grandmother. Damien looked surprised, like he hadn't expected sympathy from his new business arrangement wife. Thank you, he said after a moment. She was extraordinary. Difficult, demanding, but extraordinary. She built Blackwood Industries from nothing, and she wanted to make sure it stayed in the family. By forcing you to get married, Sophia said. By encouraging me to prioritize family alongside business, Damien said. She believed I was becoming too isolated, too focused on work. The marriage clause was her way of pushing me toward a more balanced life. Did it work? Sophia asked. Damien's smile was slight, but genuine. Ask me in a year. Okay, Victoria interrupted. As touching as this is, we have about 400 guests out there who are waiting to see if this circus is actually happening. Sophia, you need something borrowed, something blue, and a lot of confidence. Damien, you need to make sure Charles doesn't try to object during the ceremony because that man has the emotional intelligence of a goldfish and might do something dramatic. Charles won't object, Damien said with certainty. I'll make sure of it. There was something in his voice that made Sophia glad she wasn't Charles right now. Damien left the chapel, presumably to handle whatever billionaires did to ensure their recently disgraced cousins stayed quiet during impromptu wedding ceremonies. Victoria turned to Sophia the moment they were alone. Okay. Real talk. Are you actually going through with this? Because there's still time to run. I'll create a distraction. You can escape through the kitchen. I know the cathedral staff pretty well. They'll help us. Sophia considered it. She really did. The smart thing, the safe thing, would be to run. To go find Riley's wedding, apologize for being late, and pretend this whole insane afternoon had never happened. But then, she thought about her checking account balance, which was currently negative $12. She thought about the call she'd gotten last week from her landlord about raising the rent. She thought about her mom's voice on the phone, tired and worried, always working, but never quite getting ahead. $7 million could change everything. I'm doing this, Sophia said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. I'm actually doing this. Victoria studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, then let's make sure you look amazing while you do it. First problem. That dress. It's lovely, but it's not exactly bridal. I didn't exactly plan to get married today, Sophia pointed out. No, but lucky for you, I know every boutique in Manhattan. Victoria pulled out her phone and started typing furiously. I'm calling in a favor. We're getting you an actual wedding dress. Well, a white dress that's fancy enough to pass for wedding attire. We have 15 minutes. Let's make them count. 12 minutes later, Sophia stood in the cathedral's bridal preparation room, staring at her reflection in a full-length mirror and wondering if she'd somehow stepped into an alternate universe. The dress Victoria's contact had rushed over was stunning. A simple but elegant white gown with delicate lace sleeves and a fitted bodice that made Sophia look like she actually belonged in a cathedral wedding. Victoria had also produced a veil from somewhere, probably left over from her own abandoned ceremony, and pinned it into Sophia's hair with practiced efficiency. Something borrowed, Victoria said, fastening a pearl bracelet around Sophia's wrist. This was my grandmother's. Something blue. She tucked a blue ribbon into the dress's interior seam, and something old is technically this whole insane situation, so I think we're covered. Sophia touched the bracelet gently. Victoria, I don't even know you. Why are you helping me? Victoria smiled, a real smile that transformed her face from coldly beautiful to genuinely warm. Because you accidentally saved me from the worst mistake of my life, and because Damien is my cousin, and I love him, and he's been alone for too long. Even if this is just business to both of you, maybe it'll remind him what it's like to have someone around who isn't trying to use him for connections or money. I'm literally marrying him for money, Sophia pointed out. But you're honest about it, Victoria said. That's more than most people in his life can say. Now come on, your groom is waiting, and Father Morrison looks like he's one dramatic revelation away from a heart attack. Let's not test his limits. They walked back to the main cathedral, where the organ music had resumed and the guests had somehow reorganized themselves from scandal-watching mode to actual wedding mode. Sophia's heart pounded as Victoria led her to the entrance of the main aisle. Through the ornate doors, she could see Damien standing at the altar, hands clasped behind his back, looking completely calm. Like marrying a stranger was just another Tuesday for him. Maybe it was. What did she know about billionaires and their weird inheritance clauses? Ready? Victoria whispered. Absolutely not, Sophia whispered back. But I'm doing it anyway. That's the spirit. Victoria squeezed her hand once, then opened the doors. The organ swelled into the wedding march. Every head in the cathedral turned. And Sophia, who had woken up that morning as a normal, broke, slightly late advertising agency designer, took her first step down the aisle toward a future she couldn't have imagined if she'd tried. Sophia walked down the aisle alone, which felt oddly appropriate for a marriage that was really a business transaction. There was no father to give her away, no tearful mother watching from the front row. Just her, a borrowed wedding dress, and 400 strangers watching her marry a man she'd known for approximately 20 minutes. Damien's eyes never left her face as she approached. Sophia tried to read his expression, searching for any sign of second thoughts or regret, but his face remained calm, controlled, giving nothing away. It should have been reassuring. Instead, it made her nervous. What had she gotten herself into? What kind of man proposed to a stranger and then watched her walk down the aisle with the same expression he probably used during board meetings? She reached the altar. Damien extended his hand, and Sophia took it, feeling the warmth of his fingers closing around hers. Up close, she could see tiny details she'd missed before. A small scar near his left eyebrow, the precise way his dark hair fell across his forehead, the fact that his eyes weren't pure black, but a very dark brown that caught the light from the stained glass windows. "You look beautiful," Damien said quietly, and it sounded like he meant it. "You look like you're about to acquire a company," Sophia whispered back, "not a wife." His mouth twitched. "I can multitask." Father Morrison cleared his throat, clearly eager to move past the morning's drama and get to the actual ceremony. He was an older man with kind eyes and the slightly shell-shocked expression of someone who'd seen too many impossible things in the last hour. "Dearly beloved," he began, his voice carrying through the cathedral with practiced ease. "We are gathered here today to witness the union of Damien Alexander Blackwood and—" He paused, glancing at Sophia with mild panic. "Sophia Marie Bennett," Sophia supplied quietly. "Sophia Marie Bennett," Father Morrison continued, relief evident in his tone. "In holy matrimony, marriage is a sacred bond, not to be entered into lightly, but reverently, deliberately, and in accordance with the purposes for which it was instituted by God." Sophia bit her lip. Nothing about this situation felt reverent or in accordance with divine purposes. This felt like a beautifully orchestrated business deal wrapped in white silk and organ music. But then, Damien squeezed her hand gently, and she looked up to find him watching her with something that might have been reassurance in his eyes. She squeezed back, and they stood there, holding hands like they were actually in this together, instead of just conveniently aligned for mutual benefit. The ceremony continued. Father Morrison spoke about love and commitment and the sacred nature of marriage vows. Sophia tried to focus, but her mind kept wandering. She thought about Riley, who was probably wondering where her bridesmaid had disappeared to. She thought about her mother, who was going to have some very confusing phone calls in the near future. She thought about her apartment, her job, her normal life that had somehow veered wildly off course in the span of a lunch break. "Do you, Damien Alexander Blackwood, take Sophia Marie Bennett to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" Damien's voice was steady, certain. "I do." Father Morrison turned to Sophia. "Do you, Sophia Marie Bennett, take Damien Alexander Blackwood to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold, from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part?" This was it. The moment of no return. Sophia could still back out. She could say no, apologize for the confusion, and walk out of this cathedral back into her normal, struggling, overwhelmingly ordinary life. Or she could say 2 words and change everything. She thought about $7 million. She thought about her mother's tired voice. She thought about the way Damien had touched her face earlier, gentle despite the clinical nature of their arrangement. She thought about adventure, possibility, the chance to be someone other than the broke designer who couldn't afford coffee from the fancy cafe. "I do," Sophia said, and her voice didn't shake. Father Morrison looked genuinely relieved. "Then, by the power vested in me by the state of New York and Almighty God, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Damien, you may kiss your bride." Sophia's eyes widened. She hadn't thought about this part. The kiss. The very public, very witnessed kiss that would seal this insane arrangement in front of 400 strangers and probably God himself, who was definitely judging them right now. Damien stepped closer, his free hand rising to cup her face. "Is this okay?" He murmured, so quietly only she could hear. The fact that he asked, that he checked even though kissing was obviously part of the wedding ceremony, made something in Sophia's chest loosen slightly. "Yes," she whispered back. Damien leaned in, and Sophia closed her eyes. Their lips met in a kiss that was supposed to be for show, supposed to be just another part of the business arrangement, supposed to mean nothing. But the moment Damien's mouth touched hers, Sophia felt something shift. The kiss was soft, gentle, surprisingly sweet for a business transaction. His hand cradled her face like she was something precious, something worth protecting. And for a moment, just a moment, Sophia let herself forget that this was fake. She let herself believe in the fairy tale, the romance, the impossible possibility that maybe this could become something real. The cathedral erupted in applause. Damien pulled back, and Sophia opened her eyes to find him looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Surprise, maybe. Or confusion. Like he'd felt something unexpected too. But then his professional mask slipped back into place, and he turned to face the guests, Sophia's hand firmly clasped in his. "Thank you all for being here," he said, his voice carrying effortlessly. "My wife and I appreciate your presence on this momentous day." My wife. The words sounded surreal. Sophia was someone's wife. Damien Blackwood's wife. Mrs. Blackwood, if she wanted to take his name. Which they definitely hadn't discussed, and she definitely hadn't agreed to. They walked back down the aisle together, past rows of guests who were clapping and smiling, and probably wondering what they'd just witnessed. Sophia caught Victoria's eye as they passed. Victoria gave her a thumbs up and a slightly manic grin that suggested she was either impressed by Sophia's courage or concerned for her sanity. Possibly both. The cathedral doors opened onto the stone, steps outside, where afternoon sunshine had given way to early evening light. A crowd had gathered on the street, tourists and locals drawn by the obvious drama unfolding at one of Manhattan's most famous churches. Someone had apparently tipped off the press because Sophia could see photographers with professional cameras jostling for position behind the police barriers. "Smile," Damien murmured in her ear. "We're about to become very famous for the next few days." "I don't want to be famous," Sophia said, her smile feeling frozen on her face. "Too late," Damien said, but his hand squeezed hers reassuringly. "Just stay close to me. I'll handle the press." A sleek black car pulled up, the kind of luxury vehicle that Sophia had only ever seen in movies about rich people's lives. A driver in a formal suit stepped out and opened the back door. Damien guided Sophia inside, with a gentle hand on her lower back, then slid in beside her. The door closed, immediately muffling the chaos outside. Sophia sank back against the leather seats, her heart still racing. Through the tinted windows, she could see photographers snapping pictures, guests streaming out of the cathedral, the whole scene playing out like something from a dream. Or a very elaborate prank show where someone was about to jump out and tell her none of this was real. "Breathe," Damien said quietly. "You look like you're about to pass out." "I think I'm in shock," Sophia managed. "I think I've been in shock for the last hour, and it's just now catching up to me." "Understandable." Damien pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. "I'm sending a message to my assistant. She'll handle the press releases, the social media announcements, and the logistical arrangements for moving you into the penthouse tonight." "Tonight?" Sophia's voice rose. "I'm moving in tonight? The story is that we've been secretly dating for months," Damien explained calmly. "That I proposed last week, and we decided on a surprise wedding to avoid media circus. If you go back to your apartment and don't show up at my place, that story falls apart immediately. We need to maintain consistency from day one." Sophia's head spun. "But my stuff, my life, my job. I have to work tomorrow. I have a presentation due on Friday. You'll call in sick," Damien said. "Take a week off. You're on your honeymoon." "We're not actually going on a honeymoon," Sophia protested. Damien looked at her. "Sophia, for the next year, everything we do is actually happening. We're not pretending to be married. We are married. The only difference from a traditional marriage is that we know going in that it has an expiration date, but while it lasts, it has to be completely convincing." The weight of his words settled over her. He was right. She'd agreed to this. She'd said I do in front of witnesses and God and the mayor of New York, apparently. There was no half-committing to this arrangement. She was either all in, or she should have run when Victoria offered her the escape route through the cathedral kitchen. "Okay," Sophia said, taking a deep breath. "Okay." So I call my roommate, tell her I eloped with a billionaire she's never heard of, pack some essentials and move into your penthouse tonight. That's a totally normal Tuesday evening activity. "Actually, it's Saturday," Damien pointed out. "Great. That makes it so much better." Damien's mouth quirked upward. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. "For what it's worth, you're handling this remarkably well. Most people would be having a complete breakdown by now." "I might still," Sophia said honestly. "The day's not over yet. There's plenty of time for a dramatic emotional collapse." "Fair enough." Damien pocketed his phone and turned to face her more fully. "We should talk about the immediate plan. Tonight, we go to my penthouse. You get settled in. Tomorrow, we'll have a detailed conversation about expectations, schedules, and how to handle questions from family and friends. Monday, I'll introduce you to my assistant Elena, who will help you navigate the social obligations that come with being my wife." "Social obligations," Sophia repeated. "That sounds terrifying. It's mostly charity galas, business dinners, and occasional industry events," Damien said. "Nothing too complicated. You smile, make polite conversation, and let me handle any difficult situations. Think of it like acting in a play where you're cast as the billionaire's wife. Except it's not a play," Sophia said. "It's my actual life now." For a year, Damien reminded her. Just a year. And then you walk away with $7 million and complete freedom to do whatever you want. Sophia leaned her head back against the seat. $7 million. She kept coming back to that number like a talisman against her growing panic. $7 million for 1 year of her life. People did harder things for less money. She could do this. She would do this. "Tell me something real about you," Sophia said suddenly. "Not the business bio you gave me earlier. Something personal. Something that doesn't appear in your Forbes profile." Damien looked surprised by the request. He was quiet for a moment, clearly thinking. "I hate caviar," he said finally. Sophia blinked. "What?" "Caviar. Everyone in my social circle loves it. It's served at every high-end event. People treat it like some incredible delicacy. But I think it tastes like salty fish eggs, because that's exactly what it is, and I can't stand it." Despite everything, Sophia laughed. It burst out of her unexpectedly, a genuine sound that cut through the tension. "You're a billionaire who hates caviar?" "I'm a human being who has taste buds," Damien countered, but there was warmth in his voice now. "My grandmother used to force me to eat it at family dinners. She said it was important to appreciate fine things. I appreciated that she loved me enough to care about my culinary education, but I still hated every bite." "What do you actually like to eat?" Sophia asked, curious now. Damien's expression turned slightly sheepish. "Pizza. Good, greasy New York pizza from corner shops that haven't been renovated since 1975. Extra cheese, pepperoni, maybe some mushrooms. Nothing fancy, nothing complicated." Sophia stared at him. This man, this billionaire CEO in his custom suit who just orchestrated a society wedding takeover like a chess master moving pieces, liked pizza from dive shops. It was so unexpectedly normal that it made him seem suddenly, startlingly human. "We're going to get along fine," Sophia decided. "Anyone who appreciates good pizza can't be completely terrible." "High praise," Damien said dryly, but his eyes crinkled slightly at the corners. The car glided through Manhattan traffic, heading uptown toward what Sophia assumed was Damien's penthouse. She looked out the window at the familiar streets, suddenly seeing her city through different eyes. Everything looked the same, but her whole world had changed. She was married. She was rich, or would be in a year. She was Mrs. Damien Blackwood, even if that identity felt like a costume she hadn't quite figured out how to wear yet. Her phone buzzed insistently. Sophia pulled it out to find 17 missed calls from Riley and a string of increasingly panicked text messages. "Where are you?" The wedding started an hour ago. "Sophia Marie Bennett, if you're dead in a ditch somewhere, I'm going to kill you." "Okay, I just saw your face on Twitter at someone else's wedding. What is happening?" Sophia groaned. Riley saw. "She knows." "How does she know already?" "Twitter moves fast," Damien said, glancing at his own phone. "We're trending. Number 3 worldwide, actually. Hashtag Blackwood Wedding and hashtag Secret Billionaire Bride are both getting substantial engagement." "This is a nightmare," Sophia said, but even as she spoke, she was typing a response to Riley. "I'm alive, not dead in a ditch. Very long story. I'll call you tonight and explain everything. I promise." Riley's response came back immediately. "You better. I want details. Also, congratulations? I think? What is even happening?" "Good question," Sophia muttered, pocketing her phone. "If you figure out the answer, let me know." The car pulled up in front of a gleaming glass tower that stretched toward the sky like something out of a science fiction movie. Sophia craned her neck, trying to see the top, but it disappeared into the early evening clouds. The driver opened the door, and Damien stepped out, offering his hand to help Sophia navigate her wedding dress out of the car. A doorman in an impeccable uniform greeted them with a respectful nod. "Good evening, Mr. Blackwood. Congratulations on your wedding." "Thank you, Marcus," Damien said smoothly. "This is my wife, Sophia. She'll be living here now. Please update the security clearances accordingly." Marcus's expression didn't flicker with surprise or curiosity. He simply nodded. "Of course, sir. Welcome home, Mrs. Blackwood." Mrs. Blackwood. That name again. Sophia was going to have to get used to it, even knowing it was temporary. They entered a lobby that looked like it had been designed by someone who thought marble and gold fixtures were subtle decorating choices. Everything gleamed. Everything was perfect. Sophia felt acutely aware of her borrowed wedding dress and the fact that she was still wearing the slightly scuffed shoes that Damien had correctly identified as her own, rather than borrowed. A private elevator required a key card, which Damien produced from his jacket pocket. The elevator interior was lined with mirrors and soft lighting that made Sophia look dramatically different from her usual appearance. She looked elegant. Expensive. Like someone who belonged in this world of glass towers and private elevators. The elevator climbed. And climbed. And kept climbing. Sophia watched the floor numbers tick upward, past 20, past 30, past 40. Finally, at 53, the top floor, the doors opened directly into what Sophia could only describe as the most beautiful apartment she'd ever seen. Calling it an apartment was like calling the Sistine Chapel a nice room with a painted ceiling. The penthouse sprawled before her, all floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan's glittering skyline. The sun was setting, painting the city in shades of gold and amber. The furniture was modern but comfortable-looking, all clean lines and neutral tones. Original artwork hung on the walls, the kind of pieces Sophia had only ever seen in museums. "This is where you live?" Sophia breathed. "This is your actual home?" "Yes," Damien said, watching her reaction. "Do you like it? Like it?" Sophia walked toward the windows, drawn by the view. "Damien, I think you could probably see my entire apartment building from up here, and my entire apartment would fit in your living room with space left over." "Probably," Damien agreed. "Come on, I'll show you to your room." He led her through the penthouse, past a state-of-the-art kitchen that looked like it had never been used, past a dining room with a table that could seat 12, past a study lined with books and dominated by multiple computer monitors. Finally, they reached a hallway with several doors. "This is my room," Damien indicated the door at the end of the hall. "This one is the guest room, which will be yours. There's a private bathroom attached. The walk-in closet is probably larger than necessary, but my assistant will help you shop for appropriate clothing over the next few days." He opened the door to what he was calling a guest room, but looked more like a luxury hotel suite. The bed was enormous, covered in expensive linens in shades of cream and gray. The windows offered another breathtaking view of the city. The attached bathroom featured a shower with more nozzles than Sophia had ever seen, and a tub that looked deep enough to swim in. "I'll leave you to settle in," Damien said. "There are robes in the bathroom closet. Help yourself to anything you need. We'll order dinner in about an hour." "Do you have any food preferences I should know about?" Sophia turned to face him. He stood in the doorway of her new bedroom, this man she'd married, still wearing his wedding suit, looking perfectly composed despite the insanity of their day. "Damien," she said slowly, "this is really real, isn't it? This actually happened." "This actually happened," he confirmed. "You're my wife, for better or worse, for richer or poorer." "Definitely richer," Sophia said weakly. "This place probably costs more per month than I'll earn in my entire life." "You're a Blackwood now," Damien reminded her. "Money is no longer something you need to worry about." He left before Sophia could respond, closing the door gently behind him. Sophia stood alone in her new bedroom, in her new home, in her new life, and finally let herself feel the full weight of what she'd done. She'd married a stranger. She'd married a billionaire. She'd married Damien Blackwood in a cathedral full of witnesses after walking into the wrong wedding. And somehow, impossibly, it had become the right decision. Sophia kicked off her scuffed shoes and sank onto the enormous bed. Tomorrow, she'd start figuring out how to be Mrs. Blackwood. Tonight, she was just Sophia Bennett, exhausted and overwhelmed and trying to process the most surreal day of her entire life. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Riley. "Your wedding photos are all over social media. He's gorgeous. You have explaining to do." Sophia typed back, "I know. I will. Give me 24 hours to figure out what my life is now." She set the phone aside and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. $7 million, she reminded herself. 1 year of this beautiful, terrifying, impossible life, and then financial freedom forever. She could do this. She hoped. Sophia woke up the next morning, convinced it had all been a dream. The cathedral, the billionaire, the spontaneous wedding to a complete stranger. It had to be her subconscious processing anxiety about Riley's wedding and the stress of being perpetually broke. Any moment now, she'd open her eyes to find herself in her tiny apartment with Carla snoring in the next room and the neighbor's cat yowling outside their window. But when Sophia did open her eyes, she found herself staring at an unfamiliar ceiling that was at least 12 feet high, painted a pristine white that probably cost more per gallon than her monthly grocery budget. Morning light streamed through enormous windows that definitely didn't belong to her fifth-floor walk-up. And when she sat up, she realized she was wearing an incredibly soft white robe that she definitely didn't own, in a bedroom that looked like it belonged in an architectural magazine. Not a dream. Definitely, absolutely not a dream. Sophia's heart started racing as yesterday's events came flooding back. The wedding. Damien. The contract she'd agreed to without even reading properly. $7 million. She was married. She was actually married to Damien Blackwood, and she was currently sitting in his penthouse wearing a robe that probably cost more than her car. Her phone sat on the nightstand, and Sophia reached for it with trembling hands. 43 new text messages, 15 missed calls, Her social media notifications had completely exploded. She opened Instagram first, immediately regretting the decision as photo after photo filled her screen, Sophia in her borrowed wedding dress walking down the aisle. Damien kissing her at the altar. The two of them leaving the cathedral together while photographers swarmed. Someone had even captured that moment when Damien had looked at her with surprise after their kiss, his expression unguarded for just a second before his mask slipped back into place. The captions were even worse than the photos. Billionaire CEO Damien Blackwood shocks society with surprise wedding to unknown bride. Hashtag Blackwood wedding drama, jilted bride replaced at the altar by mystery woman. Who is Sophia Bennett? Everything we know about Damien Blackwood's secret girlfriend turned wife. Secret girlfriend. That was the story Damien had mentioned in the car, the narrative they were supposed to maintain. Except Sophia had no idea what a secret girlfriend of Damien Blackwood would act like. She barely knew what being anyone's girlfriend was like, having spent the last 3 years focused on work and surviving rather than dating. A soft knock on her door made Sophia jump. Yes? She called, her voice coming out higher than intended. May I come in? Damien's voice, muffled through the door. Sophia looked down at herself. She was wearing only the robe. Her hair was probably a disaster, and she almost certainly had raccoon eyes from yesterday's mascara. Maybe give me 5 minutes? Take 10. I brought coffee. Coffee. That was enough to motivate Sophia into action. She hurried to the bathroom, which was even more impressive in morning light. She found unopened toothbrushes in the cabinet. How did billionaires just have spare toothbrushes lying around? And did her best to make herself presentable. Her wedding dress from yesterday hung on the back of the door, and Sophia touched it gently, still not quite believing any of this was real. 10 minutes later, feeling slightly more human, Sophia opened her bedroom door to find Damien leaning against the opposite wall, holding 2 takeout cups from what she recognized as the best coffee shop in Manhattan, the one she'd always walked past because spending $8 on coffee felt criminally irresponsible when she was usually overdrafted. Good morning, Damien said, offering her one of the cups. I didn't know how you take your coffee, so I got you a cappuccino. If that's not right, I can send for something else. Cappuccino is perfect, Sophia said, accepting the cup gratefully. How did you know cappuccino is perfect? Lucky guess, Damien said, but there was something in his expression that made Sophia think it hadn't been a guess at all. Had he somehow researched her coffee preferences? Did billionaires do that kind of thing? He was dressed more casually than yesterday, wearing dark jeans and a gray sweater that somehow made him look even more attractive than the formal suit. His hair was slightly damp, like he'd recently showered, and Sophia caught a hint of that same cologne from yesterday. Clean and masculine and distracting. We should talk, Damien said, gesturing toward the living room. There's a lot to cover. Sophia followed him through the penthouse, taking in details she'd been too overwhelmed to notice last night. Family photos in expensive frames, mostly older pictures of Damien with an elegant woman who must have been his grandmother. Books everywhere, real books with worn spines that suggested they'd actually been read. A telescope positioned near the windows, pointing toward the sky. Small human touches in an otherwise perfect space. They settled on the couch, and Sophia wrapped both hands around her coffee cup like it was a lifeline. Damien sat at the other end, maintaining a respectful distance, but his presence still seemed to fill the entire room. First things first, Damien began. I've had my lawyer finalize the contract from yesterday. It's been sent to your email, but I also printed a copy for you to review at your leisure. He slid a thick folder across the coffee table toward her. I know I mentioned $7 million yesterday, but after thinking about it overnight, I've increased the compensation to $10 million. Sophia choked on her coffee. 10 million? Why would you do that? Because you're giving up a year of your life on extremely short notice, Damien said matter-of-factly. You didn't have time to negotiate or consult a lawyer. You walked into a wedding that wasn't yours and left as my wife. That level of flexibility and trust deserves additional compensation. Damien, 7 million was already life-changing money, Sophia said, still trying to wrap her mind around the number 10 million. You don't need to give me more. I disagree. And it's already done. The contract has been updated. He sipped his own coffee calmly, like he hadn't just casually added $3 million to their arrangement. Now, we need to discuss our story. The official narrative is that we met 6 months ago at a charity gala. You were there photographing the event for a client. I was there fulfilling social obligations. We connected over a conversation about modern art, specifically the installation pieces in the museum wing. Sophia blinked. That's very specific. It needs to be specific to be believable, Damien explained. The details matter. We had 3 dates before I asked you to be my girlfriend. All of them were private, which explains why there are no photos or social media evidence. You were hesitant about dating someone in my position, worried about the publicity and the lifestyle difference, so we kept things quiet. That actually sounds believable, Sophia admitted. The hesitant part, I mean. I would definitely be hesitant about dating a billionaire. You married one instead, Damien pointed out with a slight smile, which, according to our story, happened because I proposed last week during a private dinner at my place. You said yes. We decided we didn't want a long engagement or a media circus, and when the opportunity arose at yesterday's wedding, we took it. So the story is that yesterday wasn't completely spontaneous, Sophia said, working through the logic. We were already engaged. We just moved up the timeline because of the Charles situation. Exactly. It's romantic, impulsive, but not completely insane. And it explains why you seemed comfortable enough to go through with the ceremony. Damien pulled out his phone and opened a note. I've created a timeline of our relationship with key dates and details. You'll want to memorize this. People will ask questions, especially at social events. Your answers need to match mine. Sophia took his phone and scrolled through the timeline. It was impressively detailed. Their fictional first meeting on February 14th at the Whitmore Gallery opening. Their first actual date on February 21st at a small Italian restaurant in Brooklyn. The moment 3 months ago when Damien had told Sophia he loved her during a rainstorm in Central Park. It was all so specific, so carefully constructed, and so completely fake. You really thought of everything, Sophia murmured. I had to. My entire company depends on this marriage appearing legitimate. Damien's voice was serious now. I need you to understand how high the stakes are. If anyone discovers this is a business arrangement, my Uncle Richard will challenge the will. He'll claim I'm committing fraud. Even if we win that legal battle, the scandal would damage Blackwood Industries irreparably. Investors would lose confidence. Partners would back out of deals. Thousands of employees would suffer. The weight of his words settled over Sophia like a blanket. This wasn't just about them. It wasn't just about her getting paid or Damien maintaining control of his company. Real people's livelihoods hung in the balance. I understand, Sophia said quietly. I won't mess this up. Damien's expression softened slightly. I don't think you will. You handled yesterday better than most people would have, but I need you to know what we're up against. My Uncle Richard is ruthless. If he suspects anything, he'll investigate. He'll dig into your background, interview your friends, look for any inconsistency in our story. That's terrifying, Sophia said honestly. It is, Damien agreed. But we have advantages. The truth is that we are married. The ceremony was legitimate. We do live together. And if we're careful, if we maintain consistency and actually get to know each other well enough to sell this relationship, there's no reason anyone should doubt us. Get to know each other. Sophia repeated. That's what normal married couples do, right? I assume so, Damien said dryly. I don't have much experience with normal marriages. Me neither, Sophia admitted. My parents divorced when I was 8. My mom's been single ever since. I don't really have a model for what this is supposed to look like. Damien was quiet for a moment. My parents died when I was 15, he said softly. They were coming back from a weekend anniversary trip. A drunk driver crossed the median on the Sioux highway. They didn't suffer, according to the police. That's what everyone told me, like it would make it hurt less. Sophia felt her heart clench. She set down her coffee cup and, without overthinking it, reached across the couch to touch Damien's hand. I'm sorry. That's horrible. No teenager should have to go through that. Damien looked down at her hand on his, seeming surprised by the gesture. Thank you, he said after a moment. My grandmother helped. She was strong when I needed someone to be strong. She taught me how to channel grief into purpose, how to honor my parents by building something they would have been proud of. Blackwood Industries, Sophia said. Yes. My father started the company, but it was small then. Just a consulting firm helping other businesses implement early computer systems. My grandmother expanded it after he died. She was 72 when she took over, and everyone thought she was too old, too out of touch. She proved them all wrong. She sounds extraordinary, Sophia said. She was, Damien agreed, his voice thick with emotion. She was also controlling, demanding, and absolutely convinced she knew what was best for everyone. The marriage clause in her will was classic grandmother. She decided I needed a wife, so she created a situation where I had no choice. Do you resent her for that? Sophia asked. Damien considered the question. Sometimes. But mostly I understand. She watched me become more isolated every year, more focused on work and less on actual living. She wanted to force me to let someone in, even if that someone was just a business arrangement. He looked at Sophia then, really looked at her, and she felt that same electric connection from yesterday in the cathedral. But you're not just a business arrangement, are you? Damien said quietly. You're a real person, with your own life and dreams, and the capacity to burn water, apparently. Sophia laughed, surprised he remembered that detail from their rushed conversation yesterday. It was one time, and in my defense, I was very distracted by a deadline. What do you actually want, Sophia? Damien asked. Besides the money, what dreams have you been putting on hold? The question caught her off guard. No one had asked her that in years. Everyone just assumed Sophia was content with her life, making the best of her situation, surviving. I want to study graphic design properly, she said slowly. Not just the online courses I've been taking when I can afford them. Real, formal education at a proper art school. I want to create things that matter, not just corporate logos for clients who don't appreciate good design. And I want to help my mom. She's worked herself to exhaustion for 20 years, and she deserves to rest. Damien nodded thoughtfully. You can do all of that. After our year is up, $10 million will give you the freedom to pursue any education you want and support your mother. But what about during the year? What do you want from this arrangement beyond the financial compensation? Sophia hadn't thought about that. She'd been so focused on the money and the logistics that she hadn't considered what this year could offer beyond a paycheck. I don't know, she admitted. What am I allowed to want? Anything reasonable, Damien said. You're giving me a year of your life. I want you to be as comfortable as possible during that time. Sophia looked around the penthouse, at the artwork and the view and the evidence of more money than she'd ever seen. I want to learn, she said finally. About your world, about art and culture and all the things I've never had access to because I was too busy working to survive. Can we do that? Can you teach me to understand the art on your walls and why people pay $8 for coffee and how to have a conversation at a charity gala without feeling completely out of my depth? Something shifted in Damien's expression. Warmth, maybe, or respect. Yes, he said simply. I can do that. I'd like to do that. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the morning sun streaming through the windows and painting everything in shades of gold. Sophia was starting to realize that this year might be more complicated than she'd thought, not because of the logistics or the public scrutiny, but because Damien Blackwood was turning out to be surprisingly human. Surprisingly kind. Surprisingly easy to talk to once you got past the billionaire facade. That could be dangerous. Sophia had agreed to a business arrangement, not an actual relationship. Developing real feelings for her temporary husband would be spectacularly stupid. And yet, as she sat there holding her expensive coffee and looking at the man she'd married yesterday, she could feel herself starting to care about him as a person rather than just a means to financial security. I should probably go to my apartment today, Sophia said, breaking the silence. Get some of my actual clothes and belongings. Carla is probably losing her mind wondering where I am. I'll have my driver take you, Damien offered. And Sophia? When you tell people about us, about this marriage, they're going to have opinions. They're going to think you're a gold digger, or that I'm taking advantage of you, or that the whole thing is too strange to be real. Can you handle that? Sophia thought about it honestly. I don't know. But I'll have to, won't I? Yes, Damien said. You will. But remember, no matter what anyone else thinks, we know the truth. This arrangement benefits both of us. You're not a victim, and neither am I. We're partners in a business deal that happens to involve wedding vows. Partners. Sophia liked that term better than fake wife or business arrangement. Partners suggested equality, collaboration, two people working toward a common goal. Partners, Sophia repeated, extending her hand formally. I can work with that. Damien shook her hand, his grip firm and warm. Welcome to Blackwood Industries, partner. Your year starts now. And despite everything, despite the insanity and the impossibility and the fear that she'd made a terrible mistake, Sophia found herself smiling. Maybe this would be okay. Maybe she could actually do this. Maybe, just maybe, agreeing to marry the wrong groom at the wrong wedding had been the rightest wrong decision of her entire life. 3 hours later, Sophia stood in the doorway of her actual apartment, the one she'd left yesterday morning as a normal person with a normal life. Damien's driver had dropped her off with instructions to call when she was ready to return to the penthouse. The word penthouse still felt foreign in her mouth, like a language she was learning to speak, but hadn't quite mastered yet. She unlocked the door and stepped inside, immediately struck by how small everything looked. Her entire apartment could fit inside Damien's living room. The furniture was second-hand, the walls needed painting, and the kitchen consisted of a stove with 2 working burners and a refrigerator that hummed ominously at 3 in the morning. But it was hers. Or had been hers. She wasn't sure what it was now. Sophia Marie Bennett. Carla's voice exploded from the bedroom before Sophia could even close the door. You have exactly 5 seconds to explain why I woke up to 17 people texting me photos of you marrying a billionaire I've never heard you mention even once. Carla emerged wearing her ratty bathrobe and fluffy slippers, her dark hair piled on top of her head in a messy bun, her expression a mixture of shock, excitement, and betrayal. Start talking. Now. And it better be good because I've been spiraling for 12 hours thinking you'd been kidnapped by a very attractive cult leader. Sophia dropped her purse on the couch and sank down beside it. I need you to promise not to judge me. Oh, this is going to be good. Carla perched on the arm of the couch, her eyes wide. I'm listening. So Sophia told her. Not everything. She couldn't tell anyone the whole truth. Not even Carla. Not with so much riding on maintaining the fiction. But she told her an edited version, that she'd gone to Riley's wedding, taken a wrong turn, ended up at the Blackwood wedding just as Victoria was calling off her ceremony, that Damien had needed a wife for complicated family inheritance reasons, and in a moment of complete insanity, Sophia had agreed. "So you married a stranger for money," Carla said slowly when Sophia finished. "A gorgeous billionaire stranger who's paying you to be his wife." "When you say it like that, it sounds terrible," Sophia protested. "It sounds like the plot of a romance novel," Carla corrected. "A really good romance novel that I would absolutely read. But Sophia, this is your actual life. Are you sure about this?" Sophia thought about Damien's penthouse, about the coffee he'd brought her this morning, about the way he'd shared his grief over his parents and grandmother, about the timeline of their fake relationship he'd so carefully constructed, and the way he'd increased her payment without her asking because he thought she deserved it. "No," she said honestly. "I'm not sure, but I'm doing it anyway." Carla studied her face for a long moment. "You like him," she said finally. "Oh my God, you already like him. I can see it. You have that look." "I don't have a look," Sophia said defensively. "You absolutely have a look. It's the same look you got when we watched Pride and Prejudice and Mr. Darcy did that hand flex thing." Carla grabbed Sophia's shoulders. "Listen to me. You can't fall for your fake husband. That's literally rule number 1 of fake marriage arrangements. Everyone knows this." "I'm not falling for him," Sophia insisted. "I'm just adapting to the situation." "Uh-huh. Sure. Adapting." Carla released her and stood up. "Okay, fine. You're married to a billionaire for a year. What do you need from here? I assume you're not moving back in." The reality of that hit Sophia hard. She wasn't moving back in. This apartment, this life, this version of herself who struggled to pay rent and ate ramen 4 nights a week, that was over. At least for a year. Maybe forever, depending on how things went. "I need some of my clothes," Sophia said quietly, "and my laptop. Some personal things. Photos of my mom. Maybe my favorite coffee mug. The one that says I'm silently correcting your grammar?" Carla asked. "That's the one." They spent the next hour packing a suitcase with Sophia's belongings. It felt surreal, sorting through her life and deciding what deserved to come to the penthouse and what would stay behind. Carla kept up a running commentary about every item, making jokes to lighten the mood, but Sophia could see the sadness in her friend's eyes. They'd been roommates for 3 years. They'd survived bad dates and worse jobs together, and now Sophia was leaving. "I'll still see you," Sophia said as she zipped up the suitcase. "We'll do coffee. Lunch. Girls' nights. This doesn't change our friendship." "Yes, it does," Carla said, but she was smiling. "It changes everything, and that's okay. Change can be good, Sophia. Scary, but good. Just promise me you'll be careful. Protect your heart. And if this Damien guy turns out to be a secret villain, call me immediately so I can help you plan your dramatic escape." "Deal," Sophia said, pulling Carla into a hug. Her phone buzzed. A text from Damien. "Take your time. No rush. But when you're ready, I thought we could order pizza for dinner. Your choice of toppings." Sophia smiled despite herself. He remembered their conversation from yesterday about good pizza being better than caviar. He was trying, in his own formal, slightly awkward way, to make her feel comfortable. "That's the look again," Carla said, reading over her shoulder. "You're doomed. Completely doomed." "Probably," Sophia admitted, "but maybe being doomed isn't so bad." She called Damien's driver, said goodbye to Carla with promises to text daily, and carried her suitcase downstairs. The luxury car waited at the curb, completely out of place on her shabby street, where most people drove decade-old Hondas with questionable mufflers. As the car pulled away from her old life and headed back toward the penthouse, Sophia looked out the window at the city she'd always known, but never really had the freedom to explore. For 1 year, she would be Sophia Blackwood. She would attend galas and learn about art and live in a penthouse that touched the clouds. She would be married to a man who made her heart race and her brain short-circuit. A man who was supposed to be just a business partner, but was already becoming something more complicated. It was terrifying. It was impossible. It was the greatest adventure of her life. And as the car climbed toward the Upper East Side, and the sun set over Manhattan in shades of pink and gold, Sophia made herself a promise. She would survive this year, with her heart intact. She would collect her $10 million and walk away free. But first, she would let herself have pizza with her temporary husband and see where this strange, beautiful, impossible arrangement might lead. After all, she'd already entered the wrong wedding and married the right man. What was the harm in seeing where that story went? What did you think of their story? Share your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, what's your rating? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories, and check out more emotional stories by clicking on the end screen.